Hey guys, welcome to JR's Junk Drawer. I'm JR, this is Boots, this is Dukina. A few episodes ago, I asked you all what type of tutorial would you like to see me make? I guess I have an answer. Seriously though, thank you all for the amazing level of interaction. Thank you for all the comments. There are so many and I love them all. It's amazing ideas in there. But today it looks like we are going to be jumping into some hair tutorials. Now, I know it's been some time since the last episode, but I had an idea in my head of how I wanted to handle this episode, and it also required some new equipment. And better late than never, I finally got a new top-down camera. So I'm all set. All the test shots I've done have turned out just great. So hopefully today's shoot turns out really nice too. We also have a special guest today. My mom will be joining us for today's shoot. And, Mom, meet audience. Audience, Mom.
Hi.
Now, I know you were also interested in a more elaborate breakdown of the hair. Any thoughts on today's episode?
I'm looking forward to it.
Well, honestly, I am too. Like, this is actually going to be a fun episode. I'm overall looking forward to diving into this and kind of feeling my way through how I paint hair in this kind of setting. Not used to painting the hair with a tutorial type of setup, and this episode's going to be a full tutorial. So we'll see how it goes. So, ready to get started and jump into this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's go.
Well, I've actually already prepared some faces in advance of today's work. So let's go ahead and jump straight into this and get started. Ready?
Yep.
Okay. We made a new layer. We're going to start off with, what hair color would you like to see on the first character? You like blue?
Oh, I love blue.
Okay, then let's do some blue hair. Now we're going to start out with just the silhouetting. Zoom in on one of the faces and start painting. We're just going to blob something in. You want to make sure you're giving a little bit of extra space past where the scalp is, because you want the hair to feel like it's got some volume to it. And honestly, I'm making the hairline a little bit too low. So what we're going to want to do, a quick tip, you can actually, I have this brush as my painting brush, but let's say I had that brush as my eraser. You can actually hot swap that brush onto the eraser. If you're on the brush and you hold down on the eraser, it will swap to whatever brush you were actively using on the other. Let's make this a hairstyle I don't get a lot of practice with. Something with the hairline showing maybe. So we'll go ahead and have the hair crest upwards before it comes back down. Now we're going to want to put the hair over here on this side of the face as well. Problem is, you don't want to spend all the time tracing the outline of the face. Not going to really work out well. So go to this layer, go select, go invert. So now we have a selection. In fact, let me go in here and show the selection mask visibility. You can see my selection now. If I have it inverted, that's what I started with. If I just start over, I go select. Now I go invert. So now I can paint everywhere out here, but I cannot paint where the face is.
Where the stripes are.
Yeah. So I'll go back to my painting brush and I add in the hair.
Oh, cool.
And it will put it right up against the skin. Let me just turn down my mask visibility because I honestly don't really care for the stripes. I have them down at 0. I know what I've selected. I don't need an active visibility like assistant. Oops, what the? Oh, I forgot a step. Whoopsie. Whee! I completely forgot that when you do the selection, you have that layer selected. You want to make sure that you
make a layer.
Well, you don't have to make a new layer. You just have to make sure you reselect the hair layer. Otherwise, you're painting on the same layer as the skin, and that can be problematic, as I just found out when I tried erasing an erased part of the face. The idea here is just getting the basic silhouette so that when we dive into the rest of it, we have a general idea of the shape.
On that eraser, you're using the same brushes you have as a brush, right?
Yeah.
Is it just a round brush?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a textured round brush. It's a custom brush I made. I'll be leaving a link to that in the description down below. So make sure you check that out. I don't know where I'll post it yet, but I'll figure something out.
Cool.
Let's give her a little hair strand that comes off. Ooh, that's actually kind of nice. So like that.
I like that. That's nice.
A little too thick. And you're just playing with the shapes until you find something you like. That's all this is.
I noticed a lot of your strokes are going upwards.
Yeah. I don't really have a particular direction that I focus on. I go back and forth between the two all the time. It comes down to pressure, and once you get used to using pressure as just another tool in your toolbox, it doesn't really matter what direction you approach it from, as long as you're comfortable with it. Don't force yourself into making the hair stroke in a way that makes you feel like you're cramped and being pushed into it.
I noticed you're switching back and forth between painting and erasing.
Yeah, oftentimes, let me undo that real quick. Show you what I'm doing. You can see that it forms like a rounded edge here. You don't really want those. But with a quick use of an eraser, you can go in with the same brush, with the same exact brush actually, and drag it in and
That's nice.
feather it out. Feather it out just a bit. And come back in with the paintbrush and just toggle between the two until you find the look you're going for.
Neat.
Okay, this is close enough. We don't have to get the silhouette perfect at this relatively early stage. Let's duplicate our layer so that we have a backup in case we decide to revert. Now we're going to alpha lock it. For those of you who do not know what alpha locking is, we basically are making it so that we can only paint where there already are existing pixels. So we will not be painting outside of where the hair's silhouette is.
Even if the pen goes out there, it won't paint there.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to be using my glow brush and the multiply brush to quickly add in some highlights and shadows. Nothing too fancy, they're very soft brushes. We're not trying to do details yet. Just kind of paint in where the shadows are. And this is a good point to keep track of where your light source is coming from. So the light is hitting this side of her face right here. So it's coming in from like that angle. So it needs to be hitting the hair in roughly the same way. This side of the hair is going to be darker than this half.
In front of her and to the left.
Yeah.
And above.
Yeah, from our perspective, looking at her. From her character model, it is on her front right.
Right.
And we need to go ahead and do.
Is that dark because you've made the paint color dark?
No. This is actually because we're alpha locked. And I'm using the multiply brush. It's automatically making it darker, and I'm using the exact same color that makes up her hair. No need to mess with the color unless you feel like a hue change would look better, which sometimes it does. Play with it. There's no reason not to experiment. We have the backup of the layer for a reason. We can always revert. My way of painting is always dive into experimentation, and if you don't like it, you have undo. At least if you're working digitally, of course. I personally have a hard time painting analog anymore because I'm so thankful for having access to digital nowadays. See, now we got some nice darks. Let's add some highlights in. Nothing too fancy. Ooh.
Brush.
Okay. Yeah.
Back to the glow brush.
Now we're on the glow brush, so we can add the highlights. We're still on the exact same layer. You could make another backup if you decided you liked the multiply that you did already. I'm pretty confident that we can just undo any mistakes we make, so I'm not gonna really bother making another copy.
Yeah, but this is on the same layer as your multiply was done on. You're doing it on the glow on the same layer.
Now, one thing of note is this is using, I believe I'm using color dodge on this one. I think. Let me check real quick. Yeah, color dodge. Because we're using color dodge, it's actually going to be way too bright. Yeah, not bright. The issue is that it's too colorful. So we're going to go to our color here and desaturate it. There we go. Something like that. If we wanted to, we could even change the hue. Let's say we wanted to have a little green in there. You need to resaturate it some. And now you can get a little bit of a green, like iridescent kind of look to it. This you don't really want to overplay. A little bit will go a long way. And you can always add more at a later stage, which would look good.
Across here?
Yeah, right here, right along the shadow. Let's add a little bit right along the shadow. And now, let's go back to our base color. We're in the blue spectrum and desaturate it. I'm not really liking this. Okay, I'm going to go to the selection tool, and I am going to paint myself a box here. Invert it, so now everything outside of that shape that I just drew will be where I'm painting. That way it gets a nice hard edge right there, right on her hairline.
Wow. Huh.
I can do the same thing
Nice
on the,
tip.
yeah, now I can do the same to the other side, just to a degree. Oops, I forgot to invert it. Well, let's invert that. Not too much, just a little. We don't want a whole lot there because that's the dark side of the hair. Now you can see it's already starting to develop a nice look to it. It's got some nice color. And this is just basically our color palette that we're going to paint from here on out. I'm really liking this. I'm going to get rid of my base silhouette. There's no difference, it's just this one has a little more color. And I'm going to make a new layer, and this one, I am going to clipping mask it to it. I guess I should show you guys liquifying. Let's say you wanted to tweak your shape. There's something not right about it. You wanted to tweak it a bit, but you don't really feel like erasing and repainting some things. Go over here to your adjustments and go down to Liquify. We're going to want to get a sizable brush and just...
Huge brush.
Yeah, sizable brush and kind of just play with it. Let's say I wanted to bring this in. Let's get a little bit further out. And you can completely just go nuts with just Liquify in and of itself. It is an amazing tool and I use it all the time.
I like with the top part higher.
Higher?
Like it was.
Okay, maybe this in. So something like that. Or down a little bit more like.
Yeah, more like that.
Okay. Now just be careful when you're pushing in on this side, you're obviously going to be pushing the hair into the face. So just keep that in mind when liquifying. I sometimes just approach it with multiple strokes. Let's center that hairline a little more because her face's center is like right along there, so we want the hairline in line with that. Let's back that hairline off right there. Something like that. And come back in, erase it out just a bit. Like that. Something that-ish. Doesn't have to be precise. We're still at an early stage. Okay, what do you say we take a break and go say hi to Nutter?
Okay.
Nutter!
There he is.
Come on, Nutter! Come on. Come on, Nutter. Good boy. Yes, Nutter. Come on, let's get up here. Nutter. Hey, see the nut? There you go. Nope, Nutter. Where are you going? Come on. Come on, let's play. Which hand? Oh, got it wrong. Which hand? Nope, got it wrong. Which hand? Ah, you got it. No, just pick a hand to bury it. Which hand? Nope, not the one you left it in. It's over here. Which hand? Still not over there. Which hand? Ah, got it. I'll hold onto the nut for now and give it back to you when we're heading out. How's that sound? Come on, Nutter. Nutter.
I think he doesn't get started on my arms.
Grooming time.
With all the scratches I have on it from working in the yard.
Good boy, Nutter. Yes. Not to fall. Okay, let's go ahead and head back in. Okay, where were we?
We were liquefying.
Yeah.
You shrunk the top of the hair area quite a bit. Is that because you're planning on putting hair outside of that area at the very end? Strands or something?
Yeah, I'll be adding more strands eventually, but in general, I'm not really being too precise at this early stage. I can liquefy it more if I wanted to in various ways. Like, I could fine-tune this all day long if I really wanted to, but there's no real need to liquefy it to an extraordinary precision because I'm going to be repainting so much later on, and as you get further and further into the painting, you'll be able to tell what needs work more. So just a few tweaks are usually enough. And of course, you can always toggle your changes to see if you like the alterations you've made.
Yes.
In this case, I do. Now that we got the silhouette done, let's start work on some basic texturing. We're on the new layer that is clipping masked to the hair silhouette.
To what I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what we're going to do...
But the new layer that's clipped is a complete clean layer.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And we're on that layer now. We have that layer selected. I'm going to get the sampler, which allows us to sample a color, the eyedropper equivalent in Photoshop. And we're just going to grab some colors. Oops, I got to change my brush back to my general painting brush and just start painting it in. Nothing too fancy. Get some darks in there. And we're just kind of adding some strokes. Adding texture is what this is really doing. So you don't have to be too precise, just follow the flow of the hair with your brush strokes for the most part. And feel free to undo anything you feel didn't work as you progress. And we'll just keep going. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go in and grab the dark color. We're going to drag it up. We're going to basically right along the bottom edge of the highlight, I like doing this from time to time. Right along the bottom edge of the highlight, we're going to make it the darkest it is. In fact, we can make it a little bit darker, not too much. We don't want it to be really dark. In fact, this might be a little too dark. We'll do the same down here. We're basically just adding in what will end up looking shiny by the end. A little bit of what will turn out looking shiny. And grab some color there. Add in some strandiness there. Let's add some texture into there. I'm being very soft with the brush so it doesn't lighten it up too much. Come back in with some darks. And now we'll come back in with some lights and add some texture. And you can really get some good variance in the look just by adding a little bit of texture. Going in a little bit more precise here.
You've been using pretty broad strokes. Now you're getting a little bit smaller. I have a tendency to do too much detail too soon.
Yeah, it's a common issue. Like, that's even something I've struggled with in the past. Before I was able to get over it, it took me internalizing and really understanding that the concept of be loose. The looser you are at the early stage, the more you'll be able to refine stuff easier at a later stage. If you refine too soon, it can get a little bit messy and difficult to work with earlier than it needs to be when you're still going to be making broad changes to the overall painting. Now, I'm going to really quickly change my silhouette because I don't like this seam right there. So I'm just going to grab it real quick and change that.
You want a different layer or something? Are you changing the...
Yeah, I'm changing the silhouette layer right now, just really quickly because I didn't like that little...
The one that was clipped, the bottom below the clip 2 layer.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, the silhouette layer.
Okay.
And this is the texture layer. You can see, wow, changes a lot when you throw on that texture. Okay, we're going to start detailing now. At this point, I like this change, so I'm going to go ahead and merge the two together. If I wanted to, I can go ahead and duplicate that now so I have a backup. We're going to go into starting at the top here. There's no real preference here, just start wherever you'd like.
Eraser?
Eraser and paintbrush, just combination of the two. In fact, I'm a little bit, there we go. A little bit broader brush will work a little bit better. Just trying to get a little bit of a hairline in there. I probably exaggerated that too much, but we can play with that later with examples and refinements. We're going to come down here now and start adding some details in. By that I mean individual strands and shading. This will involve just toggling back and forth between the eraser and the paintbrush and just getting it the way you like it. Once again, there's a lot of that.
Now the layer you're working on is above? It's a new layer above the texture layer?
Nope, it is the silhouette because I merged the silhouette with the texture.
Okay.
This extra layer down here,
It's just a duplicate.
that's just a duplicate of where I was when I started this step. Just a backup I can revert to or take from if I decide to go back a little bit.
So nothing's been clipped. There's no... You're not...
I'm painting on my only layer at the moment.
Okay.
We just want to add a few strands, few loose strands. Always make the hair look nice. Few dark strands, not too many, just a few. Come back in with some highlights. I will be changing that highlight color, not too happy with it. This is just the initial highlight color that I'm going to be going with. Ooh, let's do that. Going to drag out the highlight down there and darken it up here a little bit shorter. Maybe add a sharp edge to it.
Oh, nice.
I'm just kind of free playing this. No real strategy or approach. Every time I see something I think I want to try, I'm trying it. And if I don't like it, I undo. There's no reason not to just try something. Like, for instance, right here, I don't like how much of a stark line that is, so I'm going to loosen that up with some strands. But one big change we're going to make here. We're going to go ahead and go down to the skin layer and we're going to clipping mask a new layer above it. And we're going to change that layer to multiply. We're going to start adding some shadow to the face for where the hair is landing, because right now there is no shadow from the hair. It's definitely a very important step to go ahead and add some shading. You can see the shadows that I'm adding right now are very saturated, they're very red. No problem, don't worry about it. We're going to change that. Just get something down. We can use hue and saturation adjustment to mess with it, because right now it's a separate layer, so there's no issues. We can adjust it and dial it in as much as we'd like. So now I'm going to go hue and sat, just working on the shape. So now we're desaturating it some because it was way too saturated. Maybe brightening it up a bit so it's a little less intense. You can play with the hue of the shadow as well. It's very handy. A little bit purple, actually kind of looks nice, I think. Desaturate it a bit more. Yeah, so now we have a slight purple in a very desaturated shadow tone. We can toggle it off, toggle it back on, get a good view of it. In fact, let me change this to normal real quick. That's the actual color of the layer we're dealing with. Let's grab and sample that color where it's thickest. Go ahead and change it back to multiply. And now we can paint with that color and get a good feel for this. Go back in with an eraser, maybe ease up on it a little bit. Oftentimes I'll also go in with the smudge tool, which this is the smudge tool with a soft brush. And I'll go in there and push into the shadows. That way it's lighter near the edges.
So you're kind of pressing and then lightening as you're moving into the shadow. You're raising the pressure.
Yeah, a bit.
Kind of like you do your brush stroke.
Yeah.
Your detail hair stroke is.
Yeah, a bit. Now we're going to add a little bit of a hot spot right there. Maybe soften that up a bit. And you can see now the hair's starting to look like it blends a little bit more. But I think it needs a little bit more darkness in the like when it starts getting into the darkest parts where it should be darkest. So we're going to alpha lock that. So we're alpha locking our shadow layer.
Wow, okay.
We're going to go to an ultra soft brush, bring that darkness down a little bit, and we're just going to darken it up right along the highlights. You can see that added a nice shadow to it. And now the shadows really start to look nice. If I really wanted to, I could go in even darker, like right in there, but I don't think that's necessary. It adds a nice contrast, maybe in a couple spots, like right down there where I want it to be a little less contrasty with the hair.
And under the neck, and the neck under the, right there.
Well, I'm alpha locked right now, so I can un-alpha lock it real quick and add it a little bit more smoothly.
Not too much.
Yeah. But I can always go back in with the smudge tool, ease up on it a bit. Or the eraser. Just make sure your eraser's on a soft brush if you want a soft edge. There, that looks good. I think that's good enough for the shadows at this point. What do you think?
Yeah, looks good.
Okay, going to move on to the next step here. I usually keep that as just a layer. I don't really merge that one until much later in the painting because I'll often go back and tweak that layer. Like if I decided to change the hairstyle, it'd be annoying to have to repaint the shadows while they're embedded in the face.
Yes, all right, makes sense.
So it's better to just keep it attached at this stage as a clipping masked layer so it's easy to edit. No need to merge it, it's just an extra layer. One other thing you can do, I don't always do this at this stage, sometimes I do it later, but you can go ahead and add in a little bit of extra highlights to the face if you really wanted to make one spot like really pop.
If you lighten the opacity slider on that, would it make it less intense?
If I lowered the opacity slider, yeah. Now that's personal preference. Personally, I prefer to leave the opacity slider mostly alone and just deal with pressure sensitivity and just press less hard on the page. But if it works better for you that you just dial the opacity down a bit and then use the brush stroke, there's nothing wrong with that. It's a perfectly acceptable way of approaching it. I just personally prefer to keep that at full so I always know it's at full. And then I can just come in, add some highlights. In fact, let's drop that below the shadows.
So your brushes are built with the pressure sensitive in there.
Yes. Yes, I have my brushes set to accept pencil sensitivity. And now there's it without it, there's it with it. Just a little bit of a bump. You can erase out areas that you feel should be more shadowed as you see fit. It's really getting into the details, and that's perfectly fine. Have some fun with it. Experiment. Don't be afraid to try something, and if you don't like it, get rid of it. Try it again. There we go. I like that. Maybe dial down its opacity just a bit over here. Not the brush opacity, but the layer opacity, so it's a little less intense. And now we got a really nice pop to the skin. We need to make the hair match that. So we're going to go ahead and go above the hair, clipping mask a new layer to it, because like I said, I don't like that highlight color. I want a more bright pop highlight to that, and that's not doing it for me. So let's go ahead and go down to add. I think add should do it. And I've already clipping masked it. Just need to go in there and add in some nice highlights. In fact, here's a nice trick. You can actually go in and just drag drop an entire thing on. Oh, well, let me go in there and delete that layer, make a new one. So it's completely clear. Try that again. Just paint bucket. This is basically a paint bucket if you do this, onto the entire thing. Obviously, way over the top on how neon this looks, obviously.
Anime.
So we'll go ahead and we'll go to the eraser. Technically, you could actually go in here and mask it if you wanted to and use the mask. But we're going to go in there and we're going to start deciding where the shadows fall. And maybe now come back in, add some of it back in a few spots. Let's get off the texture brush, go to just an ultra soft. You can see now, I've really indicated where the light is falling on the hair. And if I really wanted to, I can go in there, let's bring it back to a hard brush and add in some strands. This is where it will really start to pop, is when you start adding these strands that are nice and highlighted. And if you're having a hard time with the strands, it's just practice. All it is practice. Like, I have many worksheets where it's strands of hair. No head, no hairstyle, just strands of hair with S curves and C curves, and just getting a general feel for how I want the hair to find its place on the page. And just memorizing that into muscle memory. There's no reason to avoid doing a worksheet. Worksheets are a great way of practicing a specific task. And you can see it really starting to pop now.
Wow.
Right now, it's a bit neon there, but I'll handle that in a minute. For now, I'll keep working on where the light is falling. Cutting out a little bit here because technically this hair back here is behind the ear. So there should be an air gap there. We're gonna go there, and we're going to go back over here, take that edge and mess it up a little bit. So it's not just a sharp edge. And I'm liking that. Maybe a little bit of rim lighting right over here. So we'll come in here at just a smidge of rim lighting. In fact, I think that might have been a little too much right there. You don't want very much, because I'm actually going to add rim lighting later in the painting as a different step. There. Now, like I said, this is a little bit saturated, so let's go into the hue and sat, like I always do. Drop that saturation just a bit. Brighten it up. No. Way too bright. You play with the hue a bit. Looked pretty good, so there. You see just a little change, but it took the edge off of some of that neonness that was right there. Just a little edge off of it, and we can go back to working on the mask and get in there and refine where the shadows are, like on individual strands, not just the overall hair at this point. I'll go ahead and make a new layer, set to normal. I'm not going to clipping mask this one to anything. This one's going to be just for like general edits. So I'm going to go in, and we're going to do a lot of color sampling for this. Let's grab a medium color. That's way too dark up there, so let's drag that in and add just a smidge of dark. Just lots of color sampling and repaints. This is where I do a lot of tweaks until I feel happy with it. Just strand work, color work. Honestly, not happy. I'm not happy with this peak up here. Something about it's not working for me. Maybe if I grab that and drag it out. Better, I guess. Oh well, I'll figure it out as I go.
Your brush strokes are just, your hair individual brush strokes are so awesome because you've
really practiced at the light to dark stroke.
Yeah, there's a lot of pressure that goes into it. And maintaining control over the brush stroke fading in and then out again. That way it blends it. It's all about blending for a lot of it. At the moment, I'm not liking how neon the hair is looking, and I'm trying to think of the best way to go about fixing it.
Wow, I don't mind the color. I mean the neon, but maybe refine the neon to more skinnier area.
Maybe.
That would get
Maybe,
rid of it.
yeah. Yeah, let's
Beautiful.
go ahead and do just that. So we're going to go in with the medium color, and we're going to drag in into it a little bit, so it's not like looking overblown. Yeah, looking a lot better. Good catch. Good catch. Ooh, that was nice. I like that stroke. Just refine that one a bit. But there's a lot of play with it, and you got to find what feels right for you. And something like that, I think, works. Now, let's say you wanted to change the hair's color, okay?
Okay.
For this, I'm actually going to go ahead and merge this all together. At least all the hair. That way, all the hair will be one layer. So I'll duplicate it so I'll have a backup, and we'll turn off the extra layer. Okay, new layer. Let's change it down to color. And clipping mask it. Make sure it's clipping masked. We're going to go ahead and paint bucket in any color. Doesn't matter what it is, as long as it has at least some saturation. And now we can use the hue and sat to dial in the color to anything we wanted. Let's say we wanted to make a change and make it purple hair, like a purple pink hair. We can do that at this stage by using a color adjusted secondary layer clipping mask to the main silhouette. I like the purple pink. It's very pretty actually, but let's stick with the blue that we started with. Okay. One thing, you can turn it off real quick. Sample your hair color. Turn it back on. Go ahead and drop your hair color into it. So it's something like that. Just want it to look good on average. We're not going to actually keep exactly this. I'll show you a trick in a minute. Now we're going to go to the layer's opacity, and let's dial that down. We can actually dial it down as much as we want to bring back the original. So what we're doing is just desaturating it just a bit. If you wanted a more powerful desaturation, you can go to desat and just desat it a whole bunch on your color layer. Then you can dial it in exactly how much you want. It's a good way of non-destructively changing your color or your hue, at least until you merge it. So you can always undo or make more edits. but I want it just desaturated just a bit because you actually don't want your colors to be too much in the saturation. I typically, mentally, I have a 50% hue mark. I try not to exceed the 50% saturation mark for the majority of the painting. If you start getting too much onto the saturated side, things start looking too glowy a lot of times. So I try to stay in this area and only peek into this area when really necessary and for things I really want to pop. Because if everything is saturated, it gets noisy and things don't really pop as much as they should. At least handled like I do.
That makes sense.
You want some contrast, and that contrast works both with saturation and brightness. But this works for now. Yeah, definitely, it's a small change, but taking that edge off definitely helps. And I'm going to go ahead and merge it because I do like the change. We'll go ahead and go back in here. Let's say this time I want to go in there and manually paint some highlights. Add some really bright highlights, like right there. Yeah. And I can really make like a specific section pop if I really wanted to. And I can go back in there, erase it out. There's a lot of back and forth play until you find what you like. Maybe go in here and darken it and saturate it just a smidge and drag a dark line against the highlights. Having a nice dark edge right against a highlight a lot of times makes it look shiny. So you can see that to that. Added a lot more shine to it. I could play with it more. Maybe add in a little bit of a strand edge line. Grab a medium turquoise there and add in some nice edge lining. But a lot of my edge lining, I prefer to use some of my hair brushes for. Actually, I haven't been using this brush like at all. It's another great brush for adding texture. Just keep it in mind whenever you need it. Now I have two of this brush. This is my strand brush. It's the brush I use for a lot of hair strands once I'm in the detailing stage. The top one, that's a thicker one, I typically use it for strands off on their own when I want them to show. This one I use for blending and soft strands that I want to kind of just be there, but they're not really like, I don't want them to grab your eye too much. But for this, we're going to be using it for a little bit of blending. You can see it has a nice hair texture to it. Just get that pressure curve just right, you can really make it pop nicely. We're just blending the two areas a little bit with a little bit more strands. Now when we zoom out, it has a little bit of shine to it. And of course I can go in there and use this brush also for actual strand work, not just blending. Maybe drag it in there. Really make that edge pop against the background. Oh yeah, this is clipping masked, isn't it? There. You can see it now, it pops. Let's turn that layer off so we can see the changes we made. From that to that. A little bit more shine. Overall improvement, and that's all you're aiming for. You just want a little bit of improvement with every step you make. You'll eventually get to a stage where you're really happy with the look. Ugh, I actually don't like that. Undo.
That highlight down here?
Yeah, sure. We'll go back.
Just a tiny bit?
Yeah. Don't want too much, don't want to grab the eye too much. We want the highlights to be up here for the most part, but a little bit for consistency because of the angle of the hair. I'm gonna go back to this brush, zoom in down there, find the right brush size, and just a little bit of hair highlight. And don't be afraid to do dot highlights either. They oftentimes look good. I'm honestly not an expert with dot highlights, but I do find them really nice when done properly. Maybe add in a little bit more color down here. Oh, one thing I actually forgot. It's a good idea to get an idea for what your background, your atmospheric color is. Let's make a new layer. clipping mask it, and let's pick an atmospheric color. For this, we're just going to go with a gray, maybe a slightly brighter gray. We're going with blue, so yeah, let's keep it beige-ish. And atmospheric color basically means where the hair doesn't capture its own color because it's being hit by light, but instead reflects the background. Honestly, this isn't the best hairstyle to be showing like atmospheric and environmental reflection. But we could add a little bit down there, if I do it right. A little bit too strandy, maybe throw in a blend. It's not bright enough. It's not the easiest thing with some colors, but when done right, it can really look good. And a little bit can go a long way. Just a smidge of atmospheric color right there. And you can see just a little bit, it helps a bit. It's an extra highlight direction. Honestly, if I was drawing the rest of the body, I probably wouldn't put an as intensive one right there. Ease up on that just a smidge. Yeah, a little bit goes a long way, so you don't have to really worry about under-emphasizing it. Let's go ahead and grab some of these dark colors and try to drag that up. See how that looks. Ooh, that actually looks nice. Yeah, very nice. I did it on the atmospheric layer, but I don't care. It's just an extra layer to me at this point. Let's grab that color, let's darken it up, saturate it just a bit, so we can act as a mid-tone over here. And let's add a little texture to the dark side over here. Grab some darks, drag it in. There. A little bit of texture helps a lot. Now, let's say I don't really like the color of the eyes. I don't want the eyes to match the hair color. We're going to go back, take another layer, go above the skin layer, which in this case has the eyes. If you had your eyes on their own layer, you'd want to go to that. And for this, we're going to go down to color once again. Color is a great blending mode for a lot of things, a lot of reasons.
Okay, empty layer above the face layer.
Yes. And what we're going to want to do is just pick a color. Doesn't really matter. Just a little bit different than the color of the eyes are already, so you can see the change as you paint. And paint it in. You don't have to get it all. It's actually okay if some of the original color shows through just a bit. It will make it look like the eyes are a little bit multicolored. And now, zoom out a little bit so we can see the hair, so we can get an idea of what we want to do. And tried and true, go back to hue and saturation. Now we can change the eye color. Maybe saturate them more. Can't really brighten them or darken them because that's not how the color blending mode works. Might as well just keep it at 50%. Brightening them or darkening them will just desaturate them so that the color will just disappear. If that's what you're going for, if you want silver eyes, then yeah, go for it. But for this, I want some color to the eyes. Let's play with that color. Maybe like a red or a violet. Ooh, that's actually kind of nice. What do you think? What color do you think her eyes should be?
That's interesting. The violet eyes are...
Okay. Violet it is.
Goes with the blue nicely.
Yeah. Let's see if another color of violet works well. I think that looks good. Doesn't pop too much in contrast to it. There. Kind of a little bit more purple than violet.
No longer matches her lipstick.
Well, while we're on the topic, you can actually change the lips in the exact same way. Okay, do you want the lips changed? Let's change the lip color. Color layer, paint it in there. That's going to be green to begin with, whatever. We're just going to hue it in a minute. Let's go in there and make sure her teeth aren't green. Just go in there with an eraser real quick and just erase out the teeth. And just paint it in exactly where you want it to be. This one is a little bit more precise. There. Maybe a little bit more right over there. Okay. Now she's got green lips. Go full makeup. If I was actually going to do green lips, I probably had matching eyeliner.
Yeah.
But let's go hue and saturation. Let's continue with this, see how it works. Right about there on saturation. And you can play with the hue. Now they match the eyes.
Wow.
And you can get whatever color you want.
Not green.
Maybe it matches the hair. Get a little crazy with it. Let's make it match the eyes.
Weird lipstick, but
If you decided you like that, but you like the original color too, just go in there and adjust the saturation, the opacity just a bit. And you can bring in just a smidge of the new color without overpowering it.
right. Well, it makes it blend better with the eyes.
Exactly. There's a lot of play with it, and there's no wrong way of experimenting. Just throw ideas at the page and see what you like. Go crazy. And you know, we have these little edges right around the skin in a couple places that the hair doesn't quite meet the skin.
Right.
We can just go in there, go select, invert, go to the hair layer, very important, make sure you go to the hair layer.
Which layer did you do a selection on?
The skin layer.
Oh, okay, okay.
That way it's selecting the head.
Right. So what did you do on the skin layer?
I clicked select.
Okay. Sorry.
Then I clicked invert.
Okay.
Go up to the top layer, and let's go ahead. Well, actually this won't work. That layer's clipping masked. That layer, why not? And now, just paint it in a bit. It's okay if a couple little holes are showing through. It makes it look like the hair has some holes in it, like there's just little gaps. That's fine. Just add a little bit over there. There. Now we filled in those gaps. Actually, there's one tiny little one right there that kind of escaped me. Just go in there and fill that in. And there you go. Very unique looking character. But we've had some fun with this one. If for final touches, all I might do is let's go ahead and merge all the changes we currently have. New layer above it, clipping mask, and let's go ahead and do color dodge. And let's go ahead and grab that eye color. Let's see how this works. I'm not actually sure if this is going to be looking good, but I want to give it a try. Let's get a little bit of the eye color and hue in just a smidge with color dodge underneath the highlights. Adding in a little bit of essence of the second tone that's dominant in the painting can oftentimes set it off really nicely. You can see now, adds a nice glow to it. There's a big change, which is adding a little bit of purple into the hair. Even though it's still dominantly blue, just a smidge of purple makes it two-tone. Now, of course, we can go over here, hue it. I'm not going to actually do this because I like it with the purple of the eyes. It matches the eyes nicely, but you can make it whatever color you want. Because it's on its own layer, it can be freely manipulated with hue and saturation. For instance, if you had a dominantly green background, you might go with something like this so that it brings the background in.
Right.
Even if her lipstick and eyes were pink or purple. It still might make it look better to bring in some of the background color into the hair rather than just the eye color.
Yeah, reflective light anyway.
Exactly. For this though, we don't really have a background, so I'm going to go with the purple that matches the eyes. All that's really left to do is just final touch-ups at this point. So I'm going to go ahead and merge that. We can make another duplicate if we want to.
Am I going to mess you up if I say something right now?
No.
After you've merged it?
No, what? What's up?
This line to me is real harsh when I glance at it.
Great opportunity to go ahead and talk about touch-ups. Make a new layer. Does not have to be clipping mask because this is a touch-up layer. We're not going to be doing broad strokes. We're going to be doing small little tiny things like throughout the painting.
Yeah, it's almost like there's, instead of dark and light, right here at the bottom, it needs more strands coming into it.
Sure, let's do exactly that. Let's go in there and grab a harder brush rather than a soft brush. Make it kind of small.
Yeah.
And let's drag in some
You don't want to mess with your highlights, they're so pretty, but soften that straight line
Yeah,
there.
sure.
Wow.
And now break it up just a bit. Maybe grab an even darker color and drag it into there to add a nice seam. Maybe grab a highlight color and add some loose strands going the other direction.
All right.
And there you go.
Wow.
It mixed it up a little bit. And I might actually go in there and touch it up just a smidge more. Going even darker. Keep missing my stroke. But you get the idea. You mess with that until you like it. It's once again more of the same. You just keep playing with it. That's pretty much my art style, is you just play with it until you like it. There's no wrong way to experiment, in my opinion. You just play with it, and if something doesn't work, you can always change it, as long as you're working digitally at least. You add a few loose strands sticking out. Maybe that was too many. It needs to pop more there. So let's go ahead and grab the white, bright white highlight.
Wow.
And this is starting to get into the work that I would actually go down and select my thick.
Textural.
No, it's the thick strand brush. And now I'll drag it down in size a bit. You can see the difference between the two. That is just the round brush a few times. That is the strand brush. So what we'll do, go in there and add in just a couple loose strands. Just a few little loose strands can really make an image pop. You can go from being hair that looks something a little off to really being like finished. This still doesn't really have any kind of pop to it, so let's add some pop. Grab that color maybe, the darker color, and add in some shadowed. Make the brush size bigger. You can get really crazy with it. Maybe not that crazy. Okay, maybe not that crazy either. Undo too.
Wow.
Something like that can really make it pop. You can really get a good look to just a couple little strands. I'm shaking too much. There we go. This brush is also useful for refining ends of strands, because that's the strand end that was there, just kind of faded out. But now there's actually hair strands because of the brush.
And the other one almost looks like a shadow.
Mm-hmm.
The original.
Yeah. Sometimes it's fine to leave those kind of things in there, no real harm in it. Sometimes you'll want to erase it. It just comes down to how it ends up. Might go in there and add in a loose strand or two the other direction. And you can see you get a nice like pop. Let's go over here. Not liking how dull this area is looking, so let's add in a little bit of highlights. Just a little bit. And now,
Right side.
Yeah, right side and up here. Let's go ahead and add a little bit of highlight up there. Maybe a strand or two that just doubles back. Let's see, that color. There, that looks good. Now let's go over here. Start adding in, I'm making the undershadow right now for the look. We're gonna go up here, maybe add in some strands that break the perfect line that the hair is right now. Honestly, not really in love with this up here, but we can draw the eye from it a lot by adding in more details elsewhere. Not liking how noisy this is looking, so I'm just going to get the smudge tool and blur it just a bit. There. Now we're going to go in here with, oops, not that. We'll go with that. Just a loose strand there. And we work our way down. Maybe add in some loose strands on the outside edge. A couple down here that catch that same highlight that this edge has. And like I said, if you want something softer, you can always switch over to the other brush and it will be a much softer stroke. I keep getting the curve wrong. You can see it's a lot more detailed. There you go. Now, time for the reveal. We went from, with this latest layer, we went from that to that.
Wow.
We can also tap with 4 fingers and we can get rid of our interface so we can see more of the change. But from that to that, it adds in a lot more detail and it really starts making it pop. It's all about figuring out what the balance is that you like. I don't really dive into these things knowing what I'm going to be painting. I kind of just dive into it. But before we jump into the next one, there's a couple more things we want to touch up with this one.
Okay.
Her skin tone is looking a little pale because of the blue hair and her purple pinkish eyes and lipstick. So let's see what we can do about flushing out that skin tone. I also want to see what I can do about bumping up the contrast levels. Right now, it's looking a little bit flat and I just want to see what I can do about bumping that up. Go down here and new layer. Probably let's go with overlay. Overlay is a good one for if you just kind of want to mess with the colors, but you have the option of both lightening and darkening. It comes down to what color you choose, you'll see. Like I picked a light color there, so it lightened the skin tone. Let's pick a kind of a reddish in there, go with a soft brush. And kind of just add in a little bit of red cheeks. Let's see what the shadows look like when they're redder. And now if I wanted to give the light a color, we also should add some subsurface scattering, which is where light changes the color of the skin when it shines through the skin. Just a little bit, because actually this face already has some, so I don't want to add too much. Probably go with a little bit fleshier tone, yeah. Now her skin might be looking a bit too fleshy, but you can see there's a lot more color now.
Yeah, wow.
Let's go ahead and tone that down a bit to right about there.
Looks like she got a slight sun. She looks like she needs freckles.
Freckles?
Yeah.
Sure, let's add some freckles. That's not too difficult. New layer. For freckles, let's see, I gotta use one of my speckle brushes. Yeah, I think that's my freckle one. It's just a general particle brush, but it works well for this. Let's go ahead and limit the area to just like in this zone. Grab a darker flesh color. Now I know they don't look quite right just yet, but we're going to erase out the ones we don't like, fade out some of the others, and then we're going to work with the blending mode. Always a blending mode. They really are a useful tool. Okay, let's just play with this here. It'll probably be one of the darker ones like Color Burn. Ooh, Color Burn, not bad. Multiply maybe? Nah.
If you did multiply and you lightened them, wouldn't that work too?
Yeah, might. But I think I'm going to do Color Burn. It's one of the ones I like for freckles a lot. You gotta play with the color and stuff and the opacity. Hue and sat. Down the saturation a little bit. If I down it all the way, doesn't quite look right, so just a smidge. And we'll get an eraser here. We're just going to erase out a little bit of the intensity of the freckles that are on this side of the face. They're a little bit too intense. And there, she's got freckles. Want a little more? Okay, let's try a little more. Some smaller ones maybe. And now she's got freckles. How are you happy with the skin tone?
Looks good.
Okay,
That's good.
Then let's move on to the final fixes we can do for the hair. I'm gonna go ahead and merge the two layers together so we're now dealing with a single layer for all of the hair.
Even though here and here it looked like it's still
Yeah,
a hair.
those, I can actually go ahead and get rid of those. Those are just my old versions that I just preserved over time.
Ah, okay. Oh, yeah. You don't need to get rid of them. You could just leave them too.
Yeah, no harm. Until I start running out of layers, in which case I will go back and start deleting them. And for this canvas size, I actually only have like 20 layers available. So I'm going to hit that pretty soon. We're going to clipping mask a new layer to the hair. In fact, I think I already made one. I'm just going to do a quick check here. Yeah, layer's empty, so I actually already made one. Let me delete it. And let's change its blending mode to multiply. We're going to grab the hair color, switch brushes, don't want a speckle brush on this. We're going to paint in some darkness. It's not quite dark enough in most of the locations quite yet. We want some actual contrast.
Yeah, contrast in a painting, I would say, is a biggie. Your swings from high to dark, light to dark.
Yeah, I mean, contrast is key to like lighting. In fact, now you can see there's it with the new multiply, there's it without it. A lot more pop to it.
Yeah.
And we can come in here, down here, and add in like a few strands that, nope, that's way too intense. Just a little essence of it to add in just a little bit more pop to a few locations.
Same layer.
Yeah, still using that multiply layer. Just to add in a little bit of dark edges in just a few spots. In fact, I could come in here with a soft brush and add in, just try to see where I might want some darker edges. Yeah, that actually doesn't look half bad right there. You can add in just a little bit of intensity where you choose. And there we go. I think that just about does it for this first hair set.
Yeah, looks great.
Okay, well, definite improvement with that extra multiply layer. So I'm going to go ahead and merge those two together. Let's make a brand new layer, and let's move over to our second character. And let's see how we progress on this one. What kind of hairstyle do you want for this one? 'Cause like I was saying earlier, I have no idea what I'm going to paint. I dive into this deep end. Okay, I'm actually going to go ahead and stop the video right there. Message from future me here. At this point, I've already finished these characters. Love how they turn out. If you've made it this far in the video, I hope that you enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching, of course. I also hope that you just haven't fallen asleep at the keyboard. With everything said and done, this episode is running long, as I'm sure you've noticed, like really long. So I am actually going to go ahead and take this opportunity to break this episode into a part 1 and a part 2. But no worries if you were looking forward to jumping straight into part 2, it's actually already done and uploaded. And if future me did his job right, there should be a link to it appearing somewhere around here. Or maybe up here. Down here? Or maybe it's somewhere on screen, I'm sure you'll find it. I'll just stand here awkwardly until the video ends. Yep, just gonna stand here. Good girl, Bootsy.